Hi, it's Colleen Schmidt from Divination Counseling Service, here to present another medical astrology chart. This time, we're going to be looking at a disease called MGUS, which is monododal gammopathy of undetermined significance. Yes, it was a new disease for me as well. So we're going to be looking at a chart that I've done extensive work with. I'm actually very familiar with the chart we're going to be working with today. And at the time that I did all of the workup, it took me days and days. And during the session with the client, I was able to tell her that she had a disease that was like a disease, but it really wasn't that disease. I told her it was like multiple myeloma, but it really wasn't multiple myeloma. And in a minute, I'll tell you how I came to that determination. So we're going to be looking at just the disease, the blood disease itself. We're going to be looking at MALPIGHI, Magpie, Malpighi, and that is a blood, it's a hemoglobin. It happens to be conjunct the moon of this chart, so therefore it is very huge in terms of it's in a major axis. Also, her sun and moon in this particular case do meet at the Aries point, so there is even more, which is kind of interesting that I'm doing both something from the moon axis and then the other two blood disorders we're going to be, or asteroids rather, I'm sorry, we'll be looking at through the sun axis. When I did this chart, I went through the sun, the moon, the midheaven, the ascendant. So there's a tremendous amount of work done in this chart. Once I get into it, it's really difficult to separate all of the different issues that will crop up medically. That's one of the difficulties doing this work, especially in something like this where I spent days and days and days really digging. And so there are other diseases that we may be looking at as a result of this chart. Example might be rheumatoid arthritis or arthritis, but things that that are caused by inflammation are big in this chart. So that diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis are also other areas that we could use the same chart for exploration. In this particular case, I really wanted to study the MGUS, which is really going to be based not only in inflammation, but also the hemoglobin, the red blood cells. You're going to find out that some of our red blood cell hemoglobin asteroids are retrograde, so they're not reacting normally. We're also going to notice similarities, like there's some other diseases that would be similar, like fibromyalgia, because it's also a nerve ending disease that is very painful. And there are a couple of fibromyalgia asteroids, Mackey and Lopez. And then we have a lot of, more of the myeloma, multiple myeloma asteroids. So we have Bradshaw, and what's the other? I know I have two, so I know I'll run into it. I don't want to dwell, but just moving on, there's also Leeuwen, which is Leeuwen, Leeuwenhoek, okay, which is also retrograde and red blood cells. It's very close to Zeus for inflammation. So we're going to find that inflammation actually falls in the sun aspect, which means that it's a part of the general health. And that's why it was so difficult to separate some of the other factors away from the MGUS. We'll do the best we can. With that said, I'd like to take a moment for gratitude. I almost forgot in the last video. I don't want to forget it this time. I just want to say thank you so much to all of the people who are supporting this educational channel. We're not going to attract the masses, not going to get the big numbers, but that's okay. It's it's wonderful to have so much support. So your likes, your shares, your comments have actually even more meaning in such a small platform. But thank you guys so much, and thanks for the donations. That's again so small. It's so wonderful to have such support. So thank you all so much. Um, After a moment of gratitude, getting back to this chart, I just want to go through a few things that we're going to be looking at. Now, first of all, let me talk about the fact that these asteroids will not be found in the charts. So what I'm going to do instead is when I do the charts, we're just going to put in the axes. So we're going to start with Malpighi, and we're then going to move to, which is part of the moon axis, and then we're going to move to the sun axis with Ehrlich, which is the white blood cells, and it's also a plasma hemoglobin. It's another blood thing, and the other one that we're going to be using is Hunfeld, Hun. FELD, I can say those, and it is retrograde, again representing red blood cells. So you can see where there's a little bit of an issue with the red blood cells. And we're also going to be looking, and I'm sure when I get there, there's another asteroid that makes too many immature white blood cells. So that's also in the axis. So we're going to be able to look at all of these. But before I get to that, I do want to discuss why did I tell the client that it was like multiple myeloma, but it wasn't multiple myeloma? Why is it like fibromyalgia, but it's not fibromyalgia? Because Sphinx also falls in this axis, as does the asteroid Not, Not. So we know that it's like we're going to be looking at stuff, but it's not going to be that. Okay? It's kind of wild, actually. And slightly, okay, so slightly out of the whole picture, and it's like, 4 or 5 degrees, so it's really out, is Neptune. Neptune does make things more nebulous, harder to pin down. When you're talking about medical astrology, it really is symptoms that are really hard to attach to a diagnosis. It's in there, but I don't think it's as strong as it could be. The thing that's in there that's really, really strong is Hades. And so that's a concern because Hades is an indicator that perhaps there is a deterioration process that could be occurring. Okay. Other asteroids, as I mentioned before, we had two. We had Lokiethia, and we had Mackie. Both represent. Oh, and there's a few actually. Vircho's in there. So we have Bradshaw, we have Mackie, we have. I'm going to be even naming even more, but all of these fell with these not and with the questionable. It's questionable. There's missing information with the Sphinx. So that's how I came to that conclusion. Hanley's there. It's cancer, but it's not really cancer. It's deteriorating, as there is a square from Hades to Handley, but there's still those two other factors in these axes, which I think saves it. What makes it tough is all of this Zeus, okay? Because there is inflammation everywhere. But there's a lot of other disorders that also come under these axes that also relate to inflammation. Now, how this disease is managed is it is managed. Well, let's talk about the disease, okay? It's a disease that causes abnormal M proteins, I think they are called M proteins, that cause rashes and nerve problems. In some cases, it can be dangerous or life-threatening. It is a disease that lasts several years or it can last a lifetime. There is no cure. It can be managed. But MGUS does require medical attention, lab tests, and imaging. It's very rare. It affects less than 200,000 people a year. And there is, as I pointed out, no known cure, at least not yet. Um, and as I pointed out, in this case, what was so disconcerting was the fact that a parent was already lost to the multiple myeloma, which it kind of acts like. So not only did we have leukemia for leukemia, but we also had VELPAU. And it's VELPEAU. Could be French, I don't know. But it is a leukemia type of energy. Again, remember, we don't really have that. So, one of the things, and it does talk about bone marrow issues, because a lot of the stuff that comes from the blood comes from the bone marrow, and how it is an immune suppressant. And those are the factors. It's can be controlled by prednisone or steroids, okay? It's and there's something in here about antibiotics as well, but definitely steroids. It also refers to autoimmune issues. It also refers to um, inflammation and autoimmune. The steroids, the way they medicated, I kept that in. I'm trying to think of all the things I kept in. And there's a couple of things on bones. Now realize that this is a person who also has arthritis. So bones are a big factor in arthritis, but bone marrow is very big in blood disorders. Okay. That's a big one. We're going to be also looking at pain manifestation because this is a painful. So we have Petrovic, 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 and that is huge. All right. It's also, it's interesting because one of the ways in which they do work with this is stem cells. And stem cells, I don't believe that this client has undergone any stem cell work, but it's in there. Okay. Then I got to Hunsfeld, and we did talk about how that is retrograde. Okay. It's okay. I'm just making sure that I got just the ones I want. There's so much in here. You can't even believe how much is in here. So I think what I'm going to do at this point is take you to the chart, show you the axis, go through again some of, here we have another one, Willis, which is also, by the way, related to diabetes, which is also in this chart. It also refers to a autoimmune disease. Okay, so I'm going to talk a lot about autoimmune. I'm going to talk about the blood. I'm going to talk about fibromyalgia, multiple myeloma, hemoglobin, plasma, and vertigo. It's a pathology. So this will be one for the charts. So hopefully this will be not so confusing. I'm really trying to pare it down so that it's not, because if I were to throw everything up there, it'd be crazy. So Thomas is our bone marrow issue. So we really do have a little bit of everything in here, and all of it does describe not only the illness, the ways in which it's managed, and how it does manifest as a result of inflammation, and how it does cause a lot of pain. So let's jump in and look at the first chart, which I'm going to do for malignity, I can't even say it, which is conjuncting the moon. And I'll show you exactly where that is. So here's our first one. And I already put in where it would be. And I do want to point out that this particular asteroid here makes a person feel almost as though they're being held captive in some way. And I can tell you very briefly that I know that this particular disorder has really limited this particular person's ability to get around. So yes, I can see where that would actually fit in this perfectly. Now, we're also going to be looking across the dial, and we can also see right there is Arachne, and it does and has just the fact that she can't get around has really complicated her life. Other places that we're going to be looking, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is right there. And the irony is that here, one of the first things she did, even before she knew what this disease was she was seeking advice from me, which I thought was really nice. So, which is really nice that it showed up. The other factor down here is right here, and from this, which is Letitius, I'm sorry, not Letitius, it's Lacrimosa, sorry. Lacrimosa is going to tell you how absolutely serious this disease is. So for this particular individual, this is not something that's going away. It's something that she has to have to learn to live with. So in this axis right here, just to give you an idea of how much shows up at these 4 points. And just to give you an idea, because I can, and I know you can't read this, nor can you see it. Everything you see on these 4 pages, look at that, is the list that I go through. The stuff that is marked out tells you the axis that I'm working with. The blue axis was the moon. The red axis was the sun. So in the moon axis, and you can see here's the moon, and we're right on it with this asteroid. I do want to point out that the parent that had multiple myeloma was also the mom. So the moon, here we go. So there's always going to be a lot in a chart that also reflects either our spouses or the people around us, our parents, particularly genetically. I do want to point out that in this axis, there is an asteroid called Lynch, which is inherited cancers. Now, it's again going to have that Sphinx and the knot, which means it's not, but it is, okay? Which means that she could have inherited some of the genes that caused this disorder to happen, but not the cancer. So, which is actually a good thing. As a matter of fact, in this axis, there is a cancer suppressant gene. It's called Weinberg. So because she has Weinberg, and then you have Sphinx, and it's not cancer, okay, and not. But let's talk about what it is. Claude Bernard tells us that there's a hemoglobin issue with particularly the red blood cells, okay? There's, again, many asteroids that point to inflammation, but we also know that arthritis is associated with inflammation. There's also bone issues, and we know arthritis is a part of that. So we could look at Connors and say inflammation, but we could look at Connors at a later date when we decide to look up rheumatoid arthritis or arthritis. Okay, I can tell you that vitamins are recommended for this particular individual, no matter what. I think what the vitamins are going to be recommended for, at least from this perspective, and they do say vitamins. In my case, I was actually able to say vitamin C when I did this for myself. In this case, all I'm getting is vitamins, and the word is Schiff. Okay. I can tell you that Dumont is a part of this, which creates fatigue. That's a big factor, fatigue. It's the result of infection and inflammation, which affects blood and blood circulation. We already knew that. Maupertus, Maupertus, is again reminding us that there are immune factors at play. Mackey is telling us fibromyalgia is a factor. And this is running with a scapulus. Okay, we get into then funk for hemoglobin and the red blood cells again. Avery tells us that the inflammation and the C-reactive proteins could be the result of DNA. Bradshaw tells us it's like multiple myeloma, or it is multiple myeloma. Otto is for hemoglobin or hemophilia or here we go again, or a bleeder. So again, we're looking at this blood. Something is not right with this blood. As I mentioned, Weinberg is here, so we don't have we have a tumor suppressant, but we've got with it, we've got inflammation as a result of Zeus the asteroid. We've got Liu Wenhoek, Leuwenhoek. And that is a retrograde for, here we go, red blood cells again. Boerhaave, Boerhaave, or Boerhaave, is autoimmune and inflammation. Okay, so all of those factors. And I'm thinking, there was one for prednisone, and somehow either I missed it. Fleming for antibiotics, going to be on the next one, but I seem to be missing, and the next one has a chronic pain as well. It's funny how they have different asteroids in each of these that mean the same thing in each one. So I am going to bring that up. I am missing the presidone, if I'm saying it correctly, and I know it's in here. I had it marked out, and then I forgot it. And I wanted to let you know that asteroid. We did talk about Thomas. We did talk about leukemia. Eichmann is Eichmann, K-M-A-N, also is telling us B vitamins would be really important, okay? And I'm still looking for, here we go again with more inflammation, lots more information. Okay, and I'm going to use some of these for another chart. So that's why I'm not going through everything, because I want to break it up so we have different scenarios going on. And boy, it just makes me so angry when I lose things. And I lose things all the time when I'm doing this kind of work, because as you can see, it's wild. Okay. Oh, Newman is also in here for bone marrow, immune support, and again, leukemia. So I could just keep going on and on. There's much more in here than I've even written on the stuff I wrote for this. There's Lopaz, which I did talk about. And I know there is one in here for steroids. And so I just wanted to find which one it was. And hopefully it'll jump out at me, because it usually does. Here's another Bernstein for another tumor suppressant. Weinberg, Bernstein. So you got a couple there. Boy, I wish I could find that. It even had the exact president, begins with a D, but I'll have to go back and find it. So, because there's a few other drugs in here, and I'm getting them all mixed up because I get a complete workup. So basically, we're getting through this. This is the asteroid that we're looking at. This is the axis of this asteroid, but it's also the axis of the moon. Okay, so there's a lot in here. So now let's stop this. I'm going to go and we're going to do the second look, which will be Ehrlich and Hunfeld. So I'm back, and I want to go through these two, and I want to point out that they are literally like 20 minutes apart from each other, so they're very, very close. I also wanted to point out, this is what I was referring to with the sun and the moon, so that there is a connection to the Aries point, which is kind of ironic since we'll be using this chart. And with her permission, the Hunfeld-Ehrlich numbers are, I have them, here we go. I have so many pages of notes. because that's how I operate. Okay. Now, I did talk about Handley and Virchow, which are pathologies, and Handley in particular, they mean that there is a real sickness, and when you see them, you really want to look for them. In this particular case, we have Virchow, if I'm saying it correctly. Here we go again. Okay, so this all takes place down here, and it begins with 2025 and 2051. So what? And by the way, look what happens right here. Okay, so I'm going to make two comments here. First of all, there's my Sphinx I was talking so much about in our prep. Next to it is Hestia. Okay, and one of the things I'm going to point out is I don't normally, like you would say, well, what does Vesta have to do with it? There's several things. First of all, the fact that this person is very limited means that they are very distant in terms of they can't get out in the world and all that. Okay, so that kind of keeps them set apart. It's kind of Vesta. The other part is some of it could be related to stresses that were the result of work. Work and goals, trying to make those goals, trying to make that work. And sometimes people really do affect their health via their job. And this is actually something that I've seen a lot in not only my work as a medical astrologer, but in my work as an astrologer, period, is the amount of people who are willing to sacrifice literally themselves for their job is really staggering and very sad, actually. And I know that this particular individual knows how I feel about that. We've had discussions. I am not somebody who thinks you should do that. I don't believe that we're here to work. I believe we're here to live. We only work so we can live. So the reality is, if that living is being taken away by your work, then you're not really living. So little soapbox there. Anyway, we're going to get this one too. So it's not just Hestia in our numbers, because we also are going to be, so we have that fixed position. And then we have over here, we have cardinal 525 to 551. See what I mean about it's only 26 minutes apart. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we are going to be playing in here. Okay, what I thought is pretty interesting is the node isn't far away either. Okay, I'm not sure how the nodes, and by the way, the nodes of the body play into this. Of course, that's probably where they would see whether or not you had cancer. Now, as we go on, we come all the way down to, so that's one axis. Okay. The second axis will be here, 2755 to 2821. So 2755, here we go, right there. Okay. So we have Juno. And what's really interesting is the final spot is the sun. And look at this, Hera, Juno. Okay. Yeah, this person's very partner oriented. I mean, in terms of her partner, and does nothing without him. And also the health issues, they could share some health issues. They do share some health issues. Let's just say that. Anyway, this is also the sun axis, as we can see from here. Okay. And it was the ending of, here we go, work for this individual because of this MGUS. Okay. And that's in there. I think that's really important too, to point out. I do think that this is going to be controlled. We do have a victory there, but I know how much it's affected this individual's life. So let's look at what's there. Oh, other tablet. So now we have, and you're going to see the duplications taking place, because that's what I really look for in astrology, is you really want that repeatable theme, because then you know you're onto something. Okay, first of all, in this particular, we do have the nodes. So I did point that out right away on my paper. We also have the asteroid, and I'm thinking we're going to be able to find it. Apollo is in here too. Got to figure out where it is. But anyway, Apollo showed up. And what that means is, I think it's up here somewhere, and it's in a mess. So it's in with a bunch of others. It means that it slows down the immune response. In other words, one of the issues that we have with at least this disorder, but perhaps with others, is that there's a real slowness to the immune system's ability to respond. Okay. Again, we have Scherer for some inflammation, but we could use that asteroid for other things, and we might see it later in another time. The other thing is there's blood flow issues that can cause cramping from Quesnay, Quesnay. And again, we've got that leukemia, myeloid leukemia, but it also refers to an excess of immature white blood cells, and that's VELPEAU. Velpe. We have bones for ILIZAROV. Azarov, I can't say. We also have Fleming for antibiotics. We've got pain, which is Petrovic, chronic pain even. We have Vieira, VIEIRA, for increased risks for the autoimmune. So there's an increased autoimmune factor in this body. And if you understood the other diseases that were at play along with this MGUS, I think that you would see that, wow, that's very, very true. It's very, very true. So I'm going to come back. I just wanted to kind of show you how we work with these asteroids, and I wanted to show you the names, which are right here, of those asteroids. So let's come back and let's sum this up. I'm back. Oh, wrong camera. Okay, I found everything I was looking for. Okay, so I do want to further explain some things. First of all, I did find my steroids, okay? One is called Hoffmeister, okay? And it's Hoffmeister, I can say that, Hoffmeister, which also stands for genetics, but it's prednisone, okay? So that's an absolute in here. Now, there are some issues with medications in this chart as well. Oh, and by the way, Bertholda, Bertholda, is retrograde, also representing steroids. So we have an issue with steroids, and or not, we don't have an issue with steroids. Steroids are part of what is given for this particular issue. Now, there is an issue because Dong shows up here, which means that there could be some issues with medications also related into this disorder. But I was really happy because I found my two steroid asteroids, which I had been looking for because I had missed those 2 pages. There's just so much in here that it's unbelievable. And like I say, some things can mean more than one thing. So with that said, I think I've covered it all. I hope that you gained from this experience. I think we'll be seeing this particular chart again because a lot of this stuff does cross over, and there are other things that we can talk about, such as arthritis or diabetes. I think that this disease, though, that whole thing with Sphinx and Knot was probably the most exciting part about doing this work and being able to tell this person about this disease and then to say, but it's like this, but it's not. I literally had to have other people tell me what the disease was. So it was really interesting. It was one of the best learning experiences that I've had. And for that reason, I really appreciate working with this particular chart. I've been working with it for a long time, over 25 years. So it really is a chart that I know very, very well as my own. Maybe not quite, but almost. So, with that said, I do hope you got a lot from this particular video. And as always, I want to thank you for watching the video and wish you only happy readings till we meet again.